Today's episode is for anyone who's ever gone through something that shook them, whether it be a car accident, a health scare, abuse, something that just didn't hurt, but it totally changed your life. Because people don't talk about what happens after those moments. When you're left trying to figure it out, that who I am now is such a hard question to answer. So today we're sitting down with Martha Hoy, who has dedicated her work to helping people walk through that exact space and find themselves again after going through so many different battles, which we're going to get into today. Martha, it's really great to have you here. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is such a important conversation. I mean, you've been through a lot. Take us back to life before I guess the breakdown moment.
Before my life changed in an instant. I was in college. I was going to nursing school. I had my entire life ahead of me. I thought I had it all planned out. I was newly married. We were building a home. Life seemed great. It was very hopeful until I was in an accident that changed my life within seconds. I was front page news the next day. 3 people died, and I was left in a hospital bed.
Was it a car accident?
It was a car accident. I was rear-ended at a high speed.
Oh, wow.
I was rear-ended at a high speed, and all of the people in the vehicle that rear-ended me passed on.
My gosh.
Yes. So here I was this, young person with my life just starting. I was going to nursing school. Everything was wonderful. I was healthy. I could move around, and then my life changed. I went from that to not being able to get out of bed.
Do you even realize right away that your life changed? Or like, what does that feel like to wake up in a hospital bed and like everything is different? But your mind, the way that the subconscious works is it remembers normalcy, right?
Yes. I had lost everything. Even my face was disfigured. So I ended up having to have my face reconstructed. So I literally lost who I was. And I didn't know what happened because the only thing that I could remember was the sounds, and then the world turned black. That's the only thing that I remember. So when I woke up, I had no idea what happened. I was at the hospital that was close to where the accident had happened. And I knew something had happened because I remembered the sounds. And I was coming in and out of consciousness. So I remember firefighters and EMTs and that. So I knew something bad had happened. I just didn't know what at the time. And I didn't know until a police officer came to my bedside and had told me. It wanted a statement, but I really couldn't tell him anything except for what I just told you because I didn't remember. My mother found out. She was cooking dinner and she was watching the 5 o'clock news, and she heard my name and the words fatal accident.
My gosh. So that moment changed everything for you. And not only that, but there was a bunch of other stuff going on in your life as well.
Well, sometimes in life, when tragedy happens and terrible things happen, it puts a magnifying glass on the cracks. Yes. So, it ended up that my relationship, my home became very toxic. It became abusive. I had a very good mentor at the time. And she called me and she said, "Martha, I want to send you a book." What? You're going to send me a book? Everyone else is calling me saying, "Well, you get better and what can we do for you?" And she sent me a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Now, Viktor Frankl, survived one of the worst concentration camps of World War II. So I read the book and I called her and she said, "What are you going to do with this, Martha? What are you going to do with all of this?" It took me 2 years to walk and to recover. She said, "What are you going to do with it? Are you going to lay here and be the victim? Or are you going to get up and do something about it? Viktor Frankl did something with this. You can do something." So my goal was to finish nursing school. And I did that in 2 years. I had many surgeries, as I said, and I had to have my face reconstructed, but I did it. I graduated 2 years, almost to the day, from the accident.
You look absolutely beautiful. You would never know that you had a full face reconstruction. Absolutely.
I could be Dr. Hans Lees.
I mean, it's such an incredible story. And I think that it shines a light on the things that aren't working in our lives, but it also humbles people who are out there worried about little things that don't even matter. Like, I think of some of the things that I worry about on a daily basis, and I can't imagine having that just stripped away from me and having to start over in this moment, right? Like, it It changes your perspective. So, how did you recover? What was recovery like? And yeah, how did you build yourself up again?
One step at a time, my friend, one step at a time. So as I said, it took me 2 years to, get back to walking. Every day I would say, today I'm walking to the mailbox. And then tomorrow I'm going to walk to the mailbox and 2 more steps. I had a big porch in the front of the house. So I would just walk back and forth until I went to a cane. So I had my cane for the longest time, and I named him Harvey since, he was going to be with me for a while. And so it was one step at a time. It didn't happen overnight, just gradually. And tomorrow I'm going to do a little bit more than I did yesterday, even if it was one step.
How did you hold on to the mental aspect of it, like being isolated and not being able to do much? Like, what was that part like?
And that's when, the cracks that were in the relationship and my home life began to show.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very blessed to have neighbors that were wonderful, people in my life that came to check on me and were there for me. And that made a huge difference to have a great support system because, you go from being this young person who was, I was going to school and I was working and I was doing all these things and I was always on the go and I was to not being able to walk. You are isolated and you can't do a whole lot socially. So I was very lucky in that aspect. And I think that kept me going in a lot of ways daily. My big goal was to graduate nursing school. So I just kept it in my mind. I thought if I could just do one more step or 2 more steps, that's 1 or 2 more steps closer to my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And after I graduated nursing school, I actually got a job in the same hospital in which they saved my life.
Wow.
Yes. So I went from being a patient to being a nurse in that same hospital.
You must look at the whole system so much differently.
Yes, you do when you have been on both sides of that. Yes.
So I definitely know that, we go through things and people often say, just move forward. It's never quite that simple because the body doesn't let go that easily. Can you tell us about like ongoing struggles and how these experiences kind of stay stored inside of you and what do you do to combat them, I guess?
Well, as far as now, because this has been many years ago since the car accident, I do have residual from it, but it's not things, because I had knee surgeries and abdominal surgeries. So there are still things that pop up every now and again, knee pain, things like that. But I've learned to manage it. And sometimes you learn to do things in a different way than you did before.
Absolutely. I feel like the body remembers. And so some people keep reliving those events. And I just think it's absolutely incredible that you were to take this experience and turn it into magic. It was almost like the universe did orchestrated that, which I believe the universe did orchestrate that for you to maybe essentially wake up. What was life like before the accident?
Yeah, like I said, it was just normal everyday life, to go to work. I was going to school. I had all these dreams and aspirations and I was walking around just fine, just normal everyday life. But a lot of times when you lose something, such as the ability to walk or anything else, it does change your perspective because the things that you might have complained about before you could walk, you no longer care about anymore. You no longer care about how much ice is in the water or whatever these little things that people complain about because it's not important anymore. You don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what's the part of this journey that people don't see? And so people are dealing with trauma all over the world all the time. Well, what's the hardest part about trauma?
Well, losing who you are in an instant, that's the most difficult thing. And after the car accident, it actually happened again. I lost who I was. And then the relationship became so very dangerous that I had to run from my life. And I had to run from my life with just a suitcase. So in the accident, I lost who I was. And then I lost everything I ever had or ever was. So it forces you, first of all, to look at yourself. I was in a very abusive relationship. I didn't know who I was. I was told who I was, what I was going to do, what I was going to wear. And when I ran from my life with that suitcase, I describe it as I was a shell of a human being. I was just
Mhm.
existing. I wasn't really living. I was just existing.
Right. So when you say you actually ran from your life, was that the relationship that you left after your accident?
Yes.
Okay. And what was that like?
Oh boy. Of all the things that I have done in my life, and I don't care what I do from now until the end of my life, this is the one thing that I'm the most proud of because not only did I survive, but I thrived after this.
Hmm.
As I said, it was very toxic, it was dangerous, and I had packed a little suitcase because I could see it coming. I could see the fact that I was going to have to run. And this one particular day, which is very interesting that I'm known as Mother Martha in East Africa. And this was Mother's Day when this happened. I had to run. I grabbed the suitcase. I ran out of the house. There was screaming. There was whatever, the usual. And I got to my car and I just started driving. I didn't know where I was going to go because nobody had believed me. I was telling people for a long time, I'm being abused. I can't live like this anymore. Something bad is going to happen to me. So I drove just far enough that I knew I would be safe, that he wouldn't find me. And I pulled over to this little spot and I thought, who in this world can I call that I trust? And only one name came to mind. My sponsor child in Uganda. Now, what he was going to do in that moment, he was 7,000 miles away in East Africa. But I knew I could trust him and I knew that it was a comforting voice. So I called him and I told him what happened. And actually, he wasn't surprised. He said, I want you to go to my brother. My brother is in Minneapolis. Everything that you have done for me and the children and our country, he will take you in. So I went and I stayed with a friend for 3 days. We gathered up enough money for me to fly to Minneapolis, Minnesota, someplace I had never been, didn't know anything about. I had never met his brother, but I knew my friend who had adopted his brother and brought him to the United States. So I knew it was a safe place I was going. I wasn't going in completely blind. But it was still very scary because, as I said, going back was not an option. That was not an option at all. Going forward was scary, but it was the best option.
Tell everyone about the work that you do and did out there in South Africa.
It's in East Africa.
East
Yes.
Africa.
Yes. So this young man, he kept me safe outside of Minneapolis for 4 months. I say there are 3 African young men that saved my life, Jeffrey, Ivan, and Joe, and they did. They kept me hidden until I could legally break away and all those things. I had been known there as Mother Martha for probably about 5 years at that time. So they were taking care of Mother Martha very well. I had helped in an orphanage. We had done several things. I had helped my sponsor child start a charitable foundation. So when I decided that it was time, that it was safe to restart my life, I moved to Las Vegas. And when I was rediscovering who I was, the passion to help the children actually grew because I had helped them, but in turn, they had saved me. So these years later, now we help in a region of Uganda called the Kuman region. We help children, ladies who have lost their husbands, people that need medical care, end of life care, those type of things.
And you're someone that is resilient and you're not someone who follows the rules per se.
No.
That's really, really scary. I know a lot of women who are in abusive relationships and they're stuck in that cycle of, they're not feeling good, they're blaming themselves, they're still defending their partners. Leaving and starting over, as much as it sounds scary, it also sounds almost exciting. It's like the world is at your fingertips again. Did you have any of that type of mentality where you're like, holy shit, the world is mine to conquer?
Yes. Because I lived that. I was in it. It's kind of like I describe it being in an abusive relationship as to being, you're so deep down in the mud and the muck, you can't see outside of it. Right. Mm-hmm. And you blame yourself and you say, what did I do? I didn't deserve this, you do, and you defend them. And sometimes you just excuse it. Oh, well, they're stressed and they have a really difficult job or whatever. And you make all these excuses for them. And a lot of times we ignore the red flags as well. So when I got to Las Vegas and I knew I was going to ramp up all of this, these things for the children, but at the same time, I was still very much a shell of a human. My friend looked at me one day and she was like, how are you going to do all this stuff, Martha? You left with just a suitcase. And I just kept teasing her saying, well, Gandhi changed a nation and he didn't even have pants. So I have no excuse not to do this, right? Put some humor in it, right? So as I was here and I was discovering who I am, it's almost like you're detaching from who you thought you were, maybe. And now your life is blank pages. It's an open book of blank pages.
Which can be so incredibly empowering, but so incredibly, I want to say, it makes you freeze because it's like you don't know what to do with your life.
Sure.
So how did you move past that? Because man, especially now, I feel like the world is shifting in this way where people are trying to rediscover who they actually are. And you had to do that from the ground up. How do you move past that feeling of stuckness in order to move forward? Was there a lot of answers that came to you in that stillness, in the boredom, in the confusion, or how do you even recommend that someone even try or move forward? What would the first step be?
Well, the first step is to make that move. Know that you're a wonderful. No, it's not you. It's not you. It is certainly not you. And I think in that it was living, as I said, just like when I recovered from the car accident. I was doing one step at a time, and one more thing that I did yesterday. And when I got to Las Vegas, it was sort of living in the moment and doing the same thing. Because if you start with thinking in the past or thinking about what the future might be, and just think about what actions can I take right now? What can I do right now? Take what I've learned from the past, take action now so there could be a better future.
So what are some of those little steps? Speak to the person out there who feels helpless right now. What would you say to them?
Well, I'm going to tell you what worked for me. And I learned that I love fashion, that I love getting dressed up, that I love designing clothes. I didn't know that about myself, right? Until I got to Las Vegas. And I was sitting in my apartment that I was sharing with my friend, and I thought, you know what? This is Vegas. I'm just going to get dressed up. I didn't even know what I like to put on. I didn't even know what I looked good in. But I thought, let's just get dressed up. And that's going to make me feel better. Then we started playing with makeup and doing hair and all these things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. Here I am, a fashionista. Who would have thought, right? Because I grew up in West Virginia on a farm. I was a farm girl. Not that we didn't dress up, but it was more about, life on the farm and the hills of West Virginia.
Yeah. So those little things, just starting with feeling good about yourself. I know what you
Sure.
mean. I work from home, so I can literally be in pajamas most of the time. And when I sit with myself and I don't do my hair and makeup, and then one day I do, I just feel so powerful. It just gives you a little bit of a backbone, I guess. You just hold yourself up a little bit stronger. So I guess the first step is just play. Is that what would you agree?
Absolutely. That's, is just going out having experiences that I've never had before. And what a better place to do that in Las Vegas, we have the world-class things to do. There's always something to do. And that's when I discovered who I am, the things I like and the things I don't like. And coming out of that relationship as well, I also learned what I will tolerate and not tolerate and what I want as far as relationships as well. Not just in romantic relationships, but in others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So after you left that relationship, what was the process like to freedom? How did you know that you were safe?
Well, for the longest time, I didn't feel like I was. Even though I was here and I was rediscovering myself, I still felt like there was this possibility that he could find me, he would come for me, he would do things to me. So a friend of mine suggested that I get on a plane, I go back to West Virginia because that's where all of this happened. That's where the car accident happened. That's where I grew up. That's where I ran from. So I got on the plane and I went to West Virginia and I went to all of the places that bad things had happened to me. That all the terrible, terrible, really bad things that were still sticking in my mind. And as I stood there and I thought, this is what I'm afraid of? This is it? This is not something to be afraid of. And the people that had bought our home that I had ran from were very, very nice to allow me to go in and, stand on the porch and see where I ran from and all those things. And that's when I knew. That's when I really knew that I was this, I had lived up to the nickname Mother Martha. That not only now was I not that person that I was then, that I was so strong that I could stand up for other people now. I could speak for myself and stand up for other people.
Tell us about Mother Martha. Where does that nickname come from?
Well, that name started way back in 2014. My sponsored child, Jeffrey, in Uganda, started that. He started calling me Mother Teresa, and I was like, no, sir, I don't want that. I can't live up to that. I'm no saint. No, thank you. So it became Mother Martha after that. So it just spread. At first, I didn't like it at all. And I thought, why are these people old enough to be my father, grandfather, calling me mother? That they see you as a mother figure, or to be seen as a Mother Teresa type figure, somebody who takes care of things and keeps things in order, and somebody who they highly respect. So it's grown on me.
Oh, that's amazing. I think that's so cool how that just came full circle. You helped someone and then they helped you, essentially saved your life. Does that drive you every day?
Every day. Yes. And I'm going back to East Africa this fall. So I haven't been back for I have somebody else there that is doing things, and she's coming back to the US, and then I'm going to go over there. So when I get videos and I see these stories, and it just fills my heart with joy, and that keeps me going.
What does healing actually look like? What does healing begin? Like, how does it begin?
I think it comes slowly, and sometimes we don't realize it until I realized that I was healing when I could talk about it without getting emotional, when I could talk about it without crying, without breaking down, without going back to that same mindset that I had when I was that abused nurse back in West Virginia.
Yeah, that makes sense. Although, I publicly share about my addiction and I talk about it all the time. But there's been a few instances where I've been on a stage and talking about it still brings up the emotion. Like it's like healing, I feel like it's like a cylinder that's like a roller coaster. You heal and go up, but then you also go down a little bit. Like I feel like it comes and it goes, it's an interesting experience because I feel like I must be over this now because I don't get upset when I talk about it, but then I do sometimes.
Well, I think nothing's linear in our lives. We all have the ups and downs, and I would agree with that analogy, yes. But I knew that was the beginning of healing when I could talk about it without breaking down. I knew that I had started the healing process. And then when I went back to West Virginia and I stood in those places, that's when I knew that I had actually become Mother Martha. So that's what my life story, the book is called, Becoming Mother Martha.
I love that. That's so empowering. Being in those spaces, and I could just see you like just being like, this is what freaks me. I could see you standing in your power in those spaces. That's so empowering. Yeah. How about the reconnection to yourself? How did you begin to build up your self-esteem and your confidence and believe in yourself again? But at my lowest point, I literally felt like I was this little. And I didn't feel like I mattered. How did you rebuild yourself?
Well, I think it's just, again, like you said, it's an up and down, it's a slow thing. But for me, when I went back and looked and stood in those places where those things happened to me, my abusers no longer had any power over me. That power was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it wasn't me, because in those, we get this small and we think, oh my gosh, what did I do? They told me I was this, or I felt like this, when none of that is true. We don't see it that way. But I knew when I was standing there, they no longer had the power over me. that they once had. And now I have the power to say who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do you stop seeing yourself as broken? Because I know a lot of people see themselves as broken, but I don't think anybody's broken. I think we're just all have trauma in us, right? Like, what does stronger actually look like in real life?
Well, in real life, I mean, when people ask me, are you angry at your abusers? Do you hate them? Do you yell at them? No, I do not hate my abusers. In fact, I thank them because they've made me who I am today. Today, now I could say I have traveled the world by myself. I sat in the oldest parliament on the African continent as a white lady from the United States. I've been in the White House. So things that I would have never, my previous self would have never, when I was that abused, broken person, I would have never even dreamed or thought I would do those things.
And that is taking your power back 1000%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I read stories about people who, were kept captive and tortured and, back in the day, and how they have actually come face to face with their captor and thanked them. And like there was the full forgiveness. Like you see these stories, and I just think it's so powerful to do that because it like releases the handcuffs that these people can make you feel like you're attached to them in this way. Like he who angers you controls you. He who you can replace that with any emotion. And there's so much power in taking your power back and saying, you know what? I love you regardless. Thank you for this opportunity. And then you're going to go on and conquer the world.
Yes, because people like to control with fear. That's
Mm-hmm.
a huge weapon that they use against us. And when they no longer have that power to keep us in fear and cowering at them, then now we are the ones in control of us. And as I said, I've forgiven them. I have not seen my ex. I wouldn't. I don't know how I would react, honestly. I'd probably just pull some Southern out and be like, Jesus might love you, but I don't like you much. I don't know how it would react to that, but I forgive them, and I wish them nothing but wonderful things in life, and send them much love. I don't feel that way.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's such a powerful one, and it gives people so much hope. If someone out there feels like they'll never get out of what they're in, what would you like to say to them?
There's hope. And I know it doesn't feel that way right now, but there is hope. And when I ran for my life with just a suitcase, and I left everything behind that I ever was and ever knew, but I still had my life. And if there's life, there's hope.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Martha, tell everyone about the work that you're doing.
Well, as I said, we are now working in the Kuman region of Uganda. I have a book coming out May the 22nd. It's called 2020 Year of the Nurse, what it was like to be a nurse during the front lines of 2020. I also have my life story out there called Becoming Mother Martha. And our website is mommartha.com. If they would like to donate or see what we're getting ready to do this fall, we're getting ready to get things moving in Uganda once again.
What kind of things are you guys doing out there?
Well, right now, we're doing a lot of working with ladies that have, their husbands have passed on. We've been working with people who have end-of-life needs, who need medical care, who need hospice care. Our dream in that area is to build a nursing home with a hospice in it, because in that area of East Africa, the elderly are sort of being overlooked.
Okay, amazing. And people can find more information about that on your website and learn more about donating and all that wonderful stuff.
Yes.
Amazing. Is there anything that we missed today that you'd like to share? Perhaps any last minute thoughts?
Well, I think sometimes we forget, even when really bad things happen to us, that break us, that change who we are in an instant. And it's terrible, and it's traumatizing, and it's difficult. But sometimes in the end, some really good things come from it.
Yeah, and you're absolutely a true testament of that. Martha, thank you so much for being here today and for, like I said, sharing so vulnerably and openly about your story.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
And to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in. This conversation matters because so many people are quietly carrying things that have changed them. and they've been never shown how to come back from them. We will make sure to have Martha's information, including her website and more information about her books in the show notes for you to have access to her. And if this episode resonated with you and you think it'll resonate with someone that you know who may need the inspiration and help, please send it to them. Let's help each other out. Let's help lift each other up. And as we heard, Martha's a true testament of what it's like to come back from things that we never can see coming. So you can do it too. Stay tuned for the next episode, everyone. Until next time, take care.